Hi, I'm Wendy Shenefelt. I'm the current executive director of Alternate Roots. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm based in Mississippi. Alternate Roots is a regional arts organization. We're a coalition of artists that are about the creation of original art and our cultural practices, and we strive to be allies in the elimination of all forms of oppression. One of the projects that I love to highlight is Idle Crimes Heavy Work, and it comes out of Julie B. Johnson, dance professor at Spelman College. And it's a collaborative participatory project looking at incarceration Black women in the Atlanta region and across Georgia. And it's a collaborative research project, but it incorporates dance and poetry and conversations. And I think it helps us from this long history of genocide of indigenous people and enslavement, how that is connected to mass incarceration now and what we're seeing with people being disappeared here. I think you're able to track in a way that the impact of just what's in the soil of this country, especially in the Deep South, and this project with this combination of embodied movement and making sure that the voices of those who are most impacted are uplifted in this work, but also having participation of students and other people to be able to see each other as humans. And I think that's what it's all about, right? That if we can make that human connection, then we can start to dream and imagine a different world. So I think that when we look at examples of how art really was used during the civil rights movement, I think the biggest example that I think of are two things. One is mass meetings, where people would meet after being out doing field work, trying to register people to vote, and coming into a gathering place, typically a church, and they would sing together. They would also get report outs, they would get charges for the next day, whatever news they needed to share, but they would also sing. And I think that singing together continues to be a way that we build community, we can grieve through our music, but also it gives us a level of joy that can sustain us through the next day. So I always, whether you're singing in your car, you're singing in your shower, I think there's something about vocalizing as people are able, and especially with a group. Now you're seeing folks who also are really using music on the front lines of the demonstrations that are taking place now. And I think that's that through line from the civil rights movement, that it really just the power of music. And then I don't think we can talk about the civil rights movement and art without talking about John O'Neill. John O'Neill co-founded with Dr. Doris Derby and a few other folks the Free Southern Theater at Tougaloo College in Mississippi, one of my favorite places, and was really about letting people see themselves, but also being able to be participatory with the audience. You see yourself on stage and you're able to then talk about things in a different way. You may not have been thinking about something and then you see it on the stage. And so it was a time where you really could use that experience to think differently. I think that we take for granted nowadays that you have examples of yourself. You see so much representation. But at that time, that wasn't always the case. Having story circles, it's a technique that so many people use now, but I don't think at the time that folks were really interacting with people in that way. So story, theater, being able to bring up topics that might have not been talked about, and definitely not on stage. When we're looking at the trajectory from SNCC, where John O'Neill and Dr. Doris Derby were working in the SNCC field office and created, with some others, the Free Southern Theater, and then moving down to New Orleans, and then in the 80s, early 80s, emerging into Junebug Productions is still around creating amazing work. They really want to interrogate the Black experience. And I think with the idea that if people can really ask the questions and interrogate something, then you're moving towards a more equitable life. The superpower, I think, of art is holding up a mirror to ourselves, to be able to see ourselves, whether that's in dance or poetry or a visual art piece, photography, I think is so powerful at this. Hearing our own voices in music, and when you're able to see yourself and for others to really see you, I think if I can see myself and someone else sees me, then they understand that we all should have a voice. We all should have a voice in what happens next. And I think that's the power. So I think that as we're all looking at cuts that we've received or just the fear, I think I don't like to live in a place of fear. I think it's to be smart and to plan, but we don't want to live in deep fear. I really like to talk about collaboration. And so we understand that one person is exciting and wonderful, but when you get 10 people together, that's where that power is. And so I think fundraising with multiple groups is a way that you can hold work and then also take the time that's needed. If sometimes a project, when people get really busy and they have to step away, then the project just is on pause. But if you're working in a collaborative situation, then if one partner needs to take a break for a little while, the other partners can work together. And when you look at that through a donor lens or a funder lens, I think you can see how much more stable your funding can be, and you're also not competing with each other. Right? I think for too long we've had these situations where in one state or one region, they know they're only going to fund a few places there. So people are kind of crabs in a barrel fighting over the funds. We know there's enough for everyone. But if you're working as a collaborative to go after donor dollars together, it takes trust. But I think that that's a way for people to be able to take care of what they need, send a kind of a united front to say we can do these things, and then funders can also say, oh, it's a group of people fundraising together. So the times that we're in right now, I think, are very scary. They're scary for folks who make their living creating art. They're scary for people who have traditionally given to the arts, but if their financial planners are saying we don't know what's happening, I think a lot of people are constricting. And I would like to say this is not the time for that. This is not the time to constrict. If not now, when? Funding the arts at a time where everything else is getting cut. Little snippets here, little snippets there. Federal arts funding, education funding, where so many of our young people, their first and sometimes last touch of the arts is through their public school. And so if we know these fundings, the funding is getting cut in the federal level, what can we do to both pressure the federal level, but also to encourage our private donors, our big foundations, small foundations, regular everyday people to support the arts like they've never done it before? Because this is a time where we need the connectivity that the arts bring. We need in real life experiences. And for people that can't do that, really wonderful production on video and online that you're able to access, as we did during COVID, and walk through museums on video. I think that providing funding for artists to continue to make art, to be able to survive and thrive during these times, is what is going to get us through to that next, whatever that next looks like. I think when we look through history, that is what did it. The arts kept us together. The arts helped us imagine a different way. And I think that now is the time to really double down on our funding.